Welcome, everyone. This is Stefan. We've got Dave Lightfoot, Dave Heckeroth, Gretchen. I think Steve Gorsuch is going to join us quickly. Let's just move to the agenda.
And we now have Seema as well. Hey, Seema.
Hi,
hey,
David.
Seema.
How are you?
Good,
Sorry,
thank you.
David.
No worries. We're all busy.
All right. So, look, the quick introduction is basically what we're trying to achieve in OM, and it's kind of a bigger vision, but I wanted to start out with basically we're trying to do more innovation within the group. We'll talk about what CART is. We'll do a live demo of this. We'll talk about how it integrates with the product group, Dave, with your group and what we've managed to achieve there. And then somewhat a little bit of the bigger vision. It's, I want to spend most of the time in the demo because I think that's the proof in the pudding. That's the action. Dave, if we can just move to the next slide for a sec. Right. No, before that, the one slide before, please. Yep. Yeah. So what we're trying to accomplish here is using some creativity, really reviewing some of our what I call our processes, our delivery processes. What we're trying to do is insert basically automation and tools to gain this efficiency, and it should be repeatable and consistent. So that essentially what's happening is we're collapsing what I call time to market, and it's really important because we do a lot of really what I call, they're time-intensive things that are very expensive to customers. They're also expensive to us. They're not very valuable, and they're not very quick. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to basically automate that through a tool and then drive the efficiency. And CART is only one part of a bigger forum of tools and things that we've been looking at, that we're prototyping, that we ultimately want to bring to everybody's attention. And then the main use is around OM, but in some of these situations, like when we're using bureaus or we're using other types of integrations that are common across the portfolio, whether it's credit life cycle or even other areas, that these tools could be reused or they can be put into the actual product so that things, the delivery cycles are shorter. Let's talk about CART. Dave, take it away.
Yeah, and Stefan, I want to add one more thing to that, and I love this slide. It's kind of a motherhood slide, and it talks to our innovation capabilities, but I would add that it also deals with quality and the quality of the product that we provide for our customers. We're talking about efficiency, repeatability, and all those sorts of things, but I also want to emphasize the fact that quality is the product out the back end.
Yep.
So thanks for that. And what is CART? CART it stands for Coding Automated Review Tool. It's part of our OM standardization process, as Steph said, and it does all those things that we just talked about, the repeatable, improved quality, efficiency. But I think a thing to highlight is the fact that it does that by focusing on our already defined OMDM best practices. This particular code review tool only applies to the DM application, okay? And it does those things like we just commented on. It improves product quality, the performance. It shortens the time that we spend in the actual review process. So if we've gone through our development sprints and we're going to look at the code to determine whether it follows the best practices that we intend, it shortens that time. And I want to also highlight the fact that it reduces the dependence that we have on our really smart experts to sit in on those review cycles, because with the automated utility, anybody can go ahead and run the application. Another benefit is that we produce reports as part of the CART utility, and it offers us visibility at a particular point in time, and that's always a good thing. So let's kind of look at this from a before and after perspective, and I think we've touched on this a little bit, but let's talk about it again. Before CART ever existed, everything was manual. We were really at the mercy of the review team and the quality of the review team in order to apply the best practices to ensure that the DM code was the way it was intended to be. But with that, it was all humans, right? Humans make mistakes, and we found more issues in UAT and performance testing areas. After CART, we now have the ability to do things better, faster, and cheaper than we did before. We do them more consistently because we have an automated utility. We found fewer DM development issues, and that equals happy customers. Obviously, fewer change orders because the quality improves. Fewer resources needed down the line because more of those problems get caught during the development life cycle. We're faster to market. We can produce the documentation at a point in time, so it helps all those people that have a need to look at it at that point in time. When we do our retrospectives, we have the ability to understand what violated at what point in time and go from there. And I mentioned about how...
Yeah, let me add here. Dave, one of the reasons that we were looking at this is mainly because, when we did the Ally implementation, we just had a ton of problems. It's not just that we have crappy rules, but we also had performance issues left, right, and center. We're in a rush to get something done, and it's done sloppily. And what we really did is we kind of sat back and said, God, if we can just eliminate these problems during the life cycle. If you have to think of from a staffing perspective, you got 3 DMers in there. None of the DMers have talked to each other. We rotated a ton of people around. This thing is supposed to kind of, it's not necessarily going to be the glue, but it really kind of eliminates. Has the previous person done it? Is it necessary to have a knowledge transfer? Some of these things automatically kind of get pulled out of the process and are inherent, as opposed to, actually grabbing somebody and saying, do you have 10 minutes to look at my stuff? And they're not looking at the right stuff. Keep going, Dave.
Good point. Thanks for that, Steph. So when we talk about the code review process, I call them checks, right? They're evaluations. It really falls into 3 categories, and 2 of those I've highlighted here. One is the area of performance-related checks. We'll go through a couple of the ideas there. One is in the area of compile and deployment of the DM application, and I'll tell you a little story about that. And the third one that I didn't bring on the screen is really not quite as sexy, but it's still just as important, and that is the readability and maintainability of the DM application. And we have checks that accentuate that capability as well. And those are things like, are there unused variables still left in the code? Has proper naming convention been used when developing the DM application? Things like that. And because that's not, super sexy, I didn't include it here. But I did want to point out a couple of things, right? In the performance impacting checks, we have a whole host of checks that relate to potential performance improvements in the DM application. I've highlighted just a couple. One is the Save History flag, where in our development region, we have the ability to capture historical execution information for diagnostic purposes. And when we move that to a UAT or a production region, we don't want that turned on, right? It's just a drag on the system. We're not doing that level of testing in those regions. So this Save History flag needs to be turned off. That's the best practice. And what this check does is make sure that it is turned off. Another one is an excessive logic check. And here I highlight the OR expression. We have it for other expressions as well. If expressions, concatenated if statements, concatenated for loops, these are all indicative of a certain style of coding for our DM application. And the general principle is that when we have too much of that concatenation, it suggests that we might want to consider restructuring the code, considering another overall structure like a decision table or a decision tree rather than a data method, something like that. So it's really just an indicator that we should look at that code. And then this other area where we've talked about the compiling and deployment, an interesting thing happened to us this summer. When I started sharing the cart with my team, one of my team members said, Dave, I just ran into an error and I think the cart can help me. Well, if you look at the third bullet down, this was indicative of the problem. We received an error when we went to compile the DM application, and the person didn't know why. And so they said, wow, now I've got to go through all my diagnostics, figure out what the problem was. Ultimately, it took them 10 to 20 hours to hone in on exactly what the problem was, fix it, and redeploy it. Well, they told me what the problem was, and that's what's underlined there. And it was a situation where there were mismatched attributes between the object model and the DM logic. And so I built a check in CART that was able to detect that in a matter of seconds so that they now don't have to go through all that diagnostic process, and they are able to then fix it and deploy it in a matter of 15 minutes. So just a simple kind of real-world example of how by doing these checks, we're able to help ourselves in the diagnostic process as well. Okay. Over here to the right, you'll see this is a picture of the CART application. And so I think now would be a good time to go to the demo. Let me go ahead and do that. I'll bring it up.
Question while you're doing that, Dave. How widely used is this across not just the North American practice? Has this been shared with the EMEA and APJ and other teams so far? Yeah.
Right now, it's been constrained a little bit until we get the word out. I have done a brown bag. It's been primarily to our group, to the product team, and it's been North America focused. But I think you're absolutely right. I think it makes sense in situations like this to make it available to the larger team as well.
Agreed.
So Steve and Brian Salk have joined us here, and we're crashing in Sridhar's office. But you know, Dave, the idea is that if you all agree, and there's a PTO ingestion that's going to happen that we'll talk about in the slide. But the idea is what I want to do is I POC internally until we know the thing is somewhat market ready or it's robust enough. You know, I don't really want to put what I call bubble gum and duct tape out there. But we haven't really tested this thing with PNC. We're doing smaller tests with the various individuals out there to kind of refine this. But you know, the goal is if we all agree, and it's kind of part of the bigger vision. You know, within PS or even within OM, we have this problem of multiple types of tools. Everybody kind of created their own little vision of the thing. We really want to consolidate, be on one set of frameworks. We really would like to kind of almost formalize the innovation. We have a couple of other topics that we can talk at the end, but then ultimately take a pretty hard push and push it out, get some quick feedback, adjust again, and then push further out. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. I want to get some appetite understanding from you and you know from the rest of the stakeholders out there before
you had me at the 10 to 25 hours down to 15 minutes, frankly. Yeah. That all on its own is reason enough to propagate this across teams, right? Because I got to believe that's not an uncommon issue that practitioners encounter. Yeah.
So let's look at the demo, and Dave, you go through some things, and then we can talk about some of the next steps, and maybe Gretchen, you can take some notes. But we also want to give you a little preview of this other thing that we've been working on. That's pretty nifty.
Yeah.
Cool.
So here we're seeing the demo, and it comes up, and we have instructions. Let me just click out of here. It has instructions on what to do and how to do it, but the demo really starts with 3 primary files associated with the reviewing process. One is a property file, and I have an example of that here. A property file holds things like static threshold values, basically so that each person running the cart can put in their own constraints. They're defaulted with what our best practices are, but you know how that goes. People want to change the threshold by which they identify alertable conditions. And so that's what these variables are meant to do. And then a whole list of what the checks are. And so that's the property file. The second file is an export file, which is also, it's interesting. We have a lot of different names for our DM application file. One is the DM export file, the DM archive file, the DM repository file, the DM application file, all those things. If you know it by any of those other names, that's what this file is. And then we have the corresponding object model associated with the DM application, also known as the data model or the DM schema, right? It's the same file. And so once you put in that information, then you come down and you just click the check, the box for populate checks, and that populates in our window. You can select all of them or none of them, or you can come in onesie twosie, right, and select what you want. When you select one and only one, if you've forgotten what exactly that check means, over here to the right-hand side, it shows an overview of that check. But for the purposes of our demonstration, let's go ahead and select them all so I can give you an appreciation. And there's somewhere between 40 and 50 checks. It's always changing based on, new enhancements. We're up to version 12 of this thing. I want to draw your attention to this bar down here, which is a progress bar. Once I hit go, it's going to scoot through all the checks and do the thing. And I want to highlight the fact to you that over here in this region, you're going to see various check names. And when this progress bar pauses, you'll be able to read long enough the name of the check. And what that's an indication of is that particular check is taking a little bit longer than the checks before it. So without further ado, let me go ahead. I'll hit the perform checks. You can see the progress bar and the associated checks that are off here to the right. It literally only takes 6 or 7 seconds to go through all the checks, and it comes back and tells you that end of cart was reached. And so you then know that this display area is complete with all the information, all the review of the checks. If now, for some reason, you want to save and document this consultation of cart, you can certainly do that by clicking the Save button, and it writes out to the same directory that this cart executable is in, a text file that is exactly this window down here, okay? And down in this window, it's got a whole list of things. And because it's easier to look at the text file, let me just bring that up. And so it's got all the checks. And this is important because it talks about the date and time. I actually ran this yesterday. The date and time, it talks about the files that were provided, which is imperative because now if you take this away from the execution, people want to have visibility as to what was used to derive this information. And so that's important as well. We highlight all the checks that were performed, and then we also get to the part where we now have the alert conditions for the individual checks. And we talked about a situation where one of our checks looked for nested ifs, right? Or maybe it was concatenated ors, same type of thing. Here's where the threshold comes into play. The best practice says, hey, I'm only going to allow 2 nested ifs before I draw attention to it and suggest to the developer there might be another way to illustrate this particular logic construct, right? And that's just in this one check. We highlight the fact that we have a recommended action, right, to improve readability and maintenance, and there was one and only one violation found or alert found. Here's the alert, the data method name. It gives the name and the amount of the violation. So in this case, there were 4 concatenated ifs. So that's that particular check. Now, we showed in our PowerPoint this notion of the save history flag, right? And we ran that, and that is, in fact, has some alertable conditions as well. There were 7 different data methods that had the flag turned to true. And if we were promoting this to our next region, we'd, of course, want to make sure that that was 0, right? So that it didn't take a drag on the system. And so all of the checks are very, very similar to that. You know, they're either performance related, diagnostic related, best practice related, and they're all informational to that extent. So that's really a cart in a nutshell.
Oh, it's very cool. So and the thought that pops into my head, Dave, which you're going to expect from me, is if this was in the products and this is in the hands of our clients, because our goal, right, is not to hang around the client until hell freezes over. Our goal is to get the client in a good place and get them to a level of autonomy where they can manage the rules within OMDM for themselves, and they will encounter these issues themselves. So I'm kind of reaching ahead here, right? Ideally, this would be a feature set within OMDM natively out of the box, so that anybody that used OMDM, whether it's a FICO practitioner or whether it's the client managing and maintaining their rules ongoing, would benefit from this.
David, you're the best straight man in the business, because if I just go another slide or two deeper, we're gonna talk about that very issue. We're going to talk about some of the things that we're doing with the product team to make the cart type of information available in the SMW tool. It's actually a new capability called Repository Health Analyzer. And here is a picture of how it's been prototyped for us. And it's gonna, so we're not stopping just at our little point in the world. We're really trying to get that embedded into the product, and it's due to come out in June of 2019.
Excellent.
So I agree with you. Everybody here on our part of the practice agrees with you. They think that it's going to be great for FICO when it gets provided product-wide, right? It's going to push these capabilities and give visibility to what our expectations are from a standardization process, right? Now they can certainly use those thresholds and other things like that to kind of hone in on what their own desires are. But I think it really puts a stake in the ground at what those are and what they should or could be. Now, I want to highlight something with respect to PTO and how we're working with them. We really want to gain this capability as well, and that is we want to be able to define and add additional checks without needing code release. And so we haven't really driven down into that yet. That's something that's still on the table, but it's very much an interest of ours. The same way it's an interest, this is going to be for version 5 of the SMW tool. Not all of our customers are going to be there. And what do we do in the meantime? Well, that really talks to the PS part of this, and that is we're going to continue to build out our checks and cart to support all 4.x versions of the product until everybody gets to that version 5 level. And we need to have the ability to add additional checks to our cart the same way that we're suggesting the product team be able to add to their repository health analyzer, right? So we're working on those pieces as well, right? We're working collaboratively. Go ahead.
Go ahead, sorry. No, go ahead. I'll finish my thought in a minute.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, with any type of collaboration goes the need to, review the specs and the requirements, to do the GA testing, and we're all positioned to do that sort of thing. We're talking about updating the product documentation with Repository Health Analyzer because of what we know with CART and the value there. And then, of course, when it goes to training, working with the training organization to make sure that it gets shared in a way that people can consume that information.
Yeah, this is absolutely great, guys. The other thought that comes to mind is why constrain this to OMDM? I would be a very happy man if this was a standard out-of-the-box feature of Decision Modeler, right? To be able to set rules to check the integrity of your rules, yeah? Rules that check rules is kind of cool. But if this is a Decision Modeler feature, then everything that was built on Decision Modeler, which is ultimately every decision, every client or domain context-specific application that we build, such as OMDM and Strategy Director and the Falcon rules engine, Falcon X rules engine, etc., would benefit from this. Yeah, so there's a higher order of benefit that could be gained. I mean, but not. It's a kind of crawl, walk, run that we need to make here. This is really good from an OMDM standpoint, and we should make sure in working with Ravi and Alan and Satya and Sumantha and the development team that we continue to promote the notion that this is decision model of features that we're looking to achieve here, not just OMDM stuff.
Right.
So we're kind of we're finishing each other's slides here as we talk about this, but where we're trying to go is we're trying to go to this more, the TQM or the holistic OM delivery that we have, TQM to the customer, right? We're centralized. We're using common tools. CART is one. We also have a bureau management tool that we've built a proof of concept around. We're currently trying to test out auto test case generation, and Gretchen's going to show a small snapshot of what we're doing with attribute reviews and testing around attributes. But again, common availability, consistency. We want to be able to transfer this to the customer, and it's got to be market ready. Like, in other words, it has to make common sense to the client. There are things that we need, Dave, that we can talk about afterwards, but we really want to be able to, A, insert the tools into the DMLC and into the product GA processes. Because if you have all the market information, the tool or the application should be able to ingest those and test those through. And we need to kind of generalize this. It's not just some of these things I think can go across all of services. It's not just OM, but good. The process drives the quality. Sometimes we just have such a focus on QA, but it's not that. It's the holistic thing. Every piece and part during the delivery process has to have that in mind. It has to be ingrained in there. So, hey, Gretchen, you want to just, or Dave, if you want to pass the ball to Gretchen, all you need to do is show the Excel spreadsheet with the colors. Dave, what we've done here is we're trying to automate kind of attribute testing, and we've run this through TDAF, and it's saved us some incredible time in terms of managing attributes across the bureaus. But Gretchen, why don't you take away the detail here, because I don't think what people understand is in testing how much data, like Ally's a perfect example. We didn't have a lot of data to test. We're not in their environments. They don't necessarily know what to test, and we don't have enough data. We can't compile the data fast enough in order to do the testing. In other words, it's going to take us 3 or 4 months, and we want to shortcut that to 2 or 3 minutes. Here's an example of what we've done with TDAF to kind of show the progress. Gretchen, take it away.
Yep. So we built this tool because we had with thousands of hours of trying to test these attributes. Instead, we built this tool to allow us to have an expected result. So we go in with this input file that gives us we actually build the inquiry. Here's the inquiry or request message we want to build. And then at the end, it has all the expected results for each of the attributes. This is the values we expect to get out. So we import that into this tool, and we can run the tool. I'm just trying to give you, I don't want to do all tests. Anyway, I run the tool, and it will run through these tests, and it gives me the output here, which is the expected results in actual. So you can see, like, we are expecting a successful message to come back, and we got an error, so that's not true. We are expecting this score, 744. It matches. However, this score doesn't match. It's a custom score. Those scorecards don't match. Why don't they match? So we can actually hunt down. We run about 3,000 applications. Takes about 40 minutes. Previous tools we ran took about 40 minutes to run 100 applications. So, and it's running on my little tiny laptop here in Bozeman. So it's actually working pretty well and giving us a lot of data that we can hunt down and then look at metrics to say, okay, these attributes are looking good and these attributes need some work in this area, and we can really target exactly what we need to fix those attributes. We can use it beyond just attributes as well for any value in the message.
Gretchen, do me a favor. Take it back to the business problem, though, because what's really important about the context of this conversation is the lack of client understanding of what they're trying to do that they asked us to do and how we can use this tool to educate the client better.
Right. And then the other thing that's really cool that we found is that, the developers are using this themselves, and they're able to run their stuff through here and test their own code, and then it goes to QA, and QA can run larger tests, if you will. But the developers are able to manage their own destiny. Did I change this code? Does it match what it's supposed to match? And then, you don't even need as much QA. In fact, we're getting to the point, we got to the point on in TD where we can run the tools. We are actually not running any QA hours on the attributes anymore. It's developers, BAs, client.
Well, yeah, and Brian and Steve and I, look, Dave, what we're also trying to do is collapse QA cycles, right? When our customers take 8, 10, 12, 15 weeks, it's what I call it's a low value burn for both of us. Yeah, we get money, but the money is not rich. It's not valuable. It's kind of
it is, and it comes in at a commodity price point that drags down the value price point of the higher value services as well, right? So agreed.
Exactly. Right. So being able to come in with a whole toolbox around this, give it to the customer upon kickoff, make sure that all the data is in there, massaged in such a manner that we just tailor the data towards the customer, and then be able to run this through our development process, hand it off to the client, and we're doing some of this with PNC, but not at the level that I'd like to see for all customers. We eliminate any problems with perception of quality in the software, because that's what we want to eliminate. It's rock solid, Mr. Customer. That's where we want to go.
Right, and we're not going to UAT. We know not to go to UAT and get 5,000 defects because we show this to the client and they say, oh, yeah, okay, great. Okay, I need you to work on these 5 things, and we can go work on those things without the churn of the defects that the UAT process crosses.
It's goodness. It's all goodness.
This is still I don't know, it's in our
beta.
In our way, beta testing, whatever you want to call we're doing, but we're trying to be innovative.
Yeah.
No, it's great. It's really good.
There's definitely some things we could do here.
Sorry, Gretchen. My hope then is this evolves in the same way as the cart thing that we looked at to become an out-of-the-box product feature, right? Not an adjunct to the product, but inherent within the product capabilities.
That would be awesome. And the clients should use it too.
Yeah, so where I'd love to go at some point, maybe me, you, and Steve should get together and just talk about how we can pull some funding or pieces together around this, because we're doing this nights, weekends, and I believe that if we invest, we can get some really huge efficiencies here and make our customers happier. Number one, and number two, we have some other tools that we're kind of baiting that, we can set another meeting around. Rich Doherty is really interested in what we're doing with the Bureau Management tool, which is basically pulling out all like values in an English way to allow customers to kind of understand their attributes better. And we've kind of done this on the DAM. So it's something that could be incorporated into that product, but we've got some ideas. We've got some mini proof of concepts that we'd like to share. Anyway, I know we're overdone here.
No, that's good. And not to go too deep down that path, but we should elevate it above the dam, right? Because attributes as a service should be an offering that we have that isn't constrained to the OM data acquisition module, right? It should be something that is a general service available to any FICO solution that acts on third-party data. Yeah. And I know, so there's probably some connecting the dots that needs to be done here, Steph, that we should do offline with work that I know Tom Johnson's been working with the Equifax team on some conceptual stuff around attributes as a service. There are a lot of moving parts here inside of FICO that we need to coalesce. And then we'll avoid redundant effort. But I totally applaud what you guys are doing here. This is all goodness.
Cool.
Yeah, and this can be beyond just attributes as well. I mean, we can extend this to do the entire application. Right now it's very flat, but it needs some more work to get there.
Yeah,
I like it a lot.
Dave, I just do want to give a shameless plug to Akash for all the work that he did with Gretchen and the team to do this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, it's great. It's great. Very encouraging. So thank you, guys. I don't know if there's any more to show and tell here, but this has been immensely useful. I wanted, as I mentioned at the top of the call, I wanted to record this because I think as an exemplar for, collaborative innovation where good work you guys are doing in the field that benefits both the clients and FICO and can be harvested into the product. This is a really good example. The card thing's a really good example. And what you've just showed me is, again, very encouraging as a capability that we should fold into the product at large. And so this is great stuff.
Awesome. Well, thanks, everyone, for your time. Dave, I'll be in touch.
Okay.
Yeah, and could you please send me a link to the recording when we're done so I can forward it on to a bunch of guys here to show them the good work, because it's too good to hide your light under a bushel, guys. I want to make sure we promote this vigorously. Thanks again, guys. Much appreciated. Thank you. Bye-bye.